The auction platform groaned under the weight of something far heavier than timber. It carried the stain of injustice. Two Apache sisters stood tall upon it, chains binding their wrists but failing to bend their pride. Near 7 feet in height, Nara and Sarai drew every eye in the crowd, not for their size alone, but for the fierce, unbroken fire burning in their dark gaze. Low murmurs rippled through the gray hollow folk gathered below. These were no ordinary captives. They were warriors, healers, survivors of a savage assault that had torn them from their mountain home. Halvern Crow stood among them, his calloused hand tightening around the deed to his struggling ranch as the bidding climbed higher. He had ridden into town for cattle, not to witness something like this. But there was something in the way the older sister shielded the younger, something unyielding in her spirit despite everything she had endured. It struck something buried deep inside him. A memory. His own sister, lost years ago to the same ruthless desert violence. The auctioneer's hammer hovered, ready to fall into the hands of a man Halvern knew would show no mercy. Before he could think it through, his voice cut clean through the noise. 500. The number left his mouth before reason could catch it, before he could stop himself. In that single moment, 4 lives shifted course forever. Truth was, Halvern Crow only had $347 to his name. The rest would have to come from selling what little he had left of his past: his father's silver watch, his mother's wedding ring. The last pieces of a family slaughtered 5 years ago by the Caldera pack. But as he looked at the 2 Apache women standing unbroken before him, he understood something clear as daylight. Some things were worth more than money, more than memory. The hammer slammed down with a sharp crack that echoed across the dusty square. Sold to Halvern Crow. The crowd began to scatter. Some grumbled at losing cheap labor. Others walked away relieved, spared from explaining why they had brought home 2 towering Apache women who looked capable of tearing a man apart with bare hands. Nara, 26 and unshaken, watched Halvern approach with sharp, measuring eyes. Behind her stood Sarai, barely 19, silent as ever, shadowing her sister just as she had since childhood. Both of them stood nearly 7 feet tall, a legacy of warriors whose names were still spoken with reverence around Apache fires. "I'm taking these chains off," Halvern said quietly, pulling a key from his pocket. "After that, you're free to go wherever you want." The sisters exchanged a glance heavy with unspoken meaning. 3 months earlier, they had been captured during the raid that destroyed their village, torn from their people, sold like livestock. But this man, this pale-eyed cowboy with sorrow etched into his face, he was different. In captivity, they had learned to read men quickly. This one carried pain, not cruelty. Nara spoke first, her English careful, shaped by missionaries who had once passed through her homeland. "You paid for us. By the white man's law, we belong to you now." Halvern shook his head, forcing open the iron restraints around her wrists. "That's not how this works. I didn't buy you to own you. I bought you to set you free, that's all." "And where would we go?" Sarai asked, her voice soft but steady. "Our village is gone, our people scattered. The Iron Dominion hunts us." She held his gaze, unflinching. "We are not welcome in white towns. You gave us freedom. But freedom for what? To starve? To be taken again by worse men?" The chains dropped to the ground with a dull, metallic thud. Both women rubbed at their raw skin, but neither stepped away. Reality pressed down on them like the desert heat. Halvern exhaled slowly. "I've got a ranch," he said. "Ain't much. Just me, a few head of cattle. But there's a roof, food, and honest work if you want it. No chains, no master." He hesitated, searching for words that didn't sound like pity. "A partnership, I guess. You help me run the place. I give you somewhere to stay till you figure out what comes next." Nara tilted her head slightly, studying him the way a hawk studies movement in the grass. "You would trust 2 Apache warriors inside your home?" she asked. "Your people believe we are savages." Halvern gave a bitter half-smile. "My people taught me a lot of lies." He met her eyes evenly. "And you've had 3 chances to kill me since I unlocked those chains. I'm still standing. That tells me enough about who you really are." "My people taught me plenty of lies," Halvern said quietly. "And you've already had 3 chances to kill me since I took those chains off. I'm still standing. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." The late afternoon sun stretched long across the street, casting gold over the 3 of them, while the gray hollow folk kept their distance, slipping past like shadows avoiding trouble on a decent street. No one wanted to be too close to what they didn't understand. Halvern didn't press them. He just waited. The choice was theirs. Sirai leaned in and murmured something in Apache beneath her breath. Nara listened, then gave a slow nod. When she looked back at Halvern, there was a faint smile on her lips. Not warm, not soft, but honest. "We accept your offer, Halvern Crow," she said, "but understand this. We are not your property, not servants, not charity." Her voice carried quiet steel. "We are Nara and Sirai of our people. We stand with you because honor answers honor. We work beside you because strength recognizes strength. And if danger comes for you, it will find us standing in its way." Something inside Halvern, something he'd been carrying for years, finally loosened. "That sounds fair to me," he said. He glanced towards the general store. "My wagon's out front. We'll pick up supplies, then head back." The 3 of them walked through town together, the grief-marked cowboy and the 2 towering Apache women. Eyes followed them from porches, windows, and doorways. Some watched with fear, others with open disdain, a few with reluctant respect. And somewhere along that dusty street, Halvern Crow learned something he wouldn't forget. The choices that matter most rarely make sense on paper. They come from somewhere deeper than reason. He had no way of knowing that this one decision, this simple act of decency, would set something much larger into motion. Something that would ripple across the frontier, binding unlikely allies together against forces that threatened everyone, no matter the color of their skin. The Morrison Ranch sat 15 miles outside town, tucked into a valley guarded by red stone cliffs on 3 sides, with a narrow seasonal creek cutting through the land, even in the driest months. It wasn't much to look at. A modest cabin, a leaning barn, fences that barely held 30 head of cattle on a good day. But it was honest land, worked by honest hands. And for the first time in months, Nare and Sirai felt something close to peace. "The cabin's got 2 rooms," Halvern said as they pulled the wagon to a stop. "You can take the main one. I'll use the smaller space out back." He gestured toward the barn. "There's a loft up there, too. Dry, warm, if you'd rather have more privacy." Nara stepped down from the wagon with quiet grace despite her height. Her buckskin clothing caught the light against the dust of the yard. "We'll take the loft," she said. "Higher ground sees danger sooner." Halvern nodded. He understood. Trust didn't come easy, if it came at all. They had been betrayed, hunted, sold like animals. It would take time before any place felt safe, especially the ranch of a white man sitting in disputed Apache land. Sirai began unloading supplies, her movements controlled, precise. Like her sister, she carried herself with the deadly balance of someone raised for survival. But Halvern noticed something else. The way she favored her left side. The way her breath hitched when lifting heavier sacks. "You're hurt," he said, not accusing, just observant. "It's nothing," Sirai answered quickly. Nara shot her a sharp look. "Broken ribs," she admitted. "1, maybe 2. She fell from her horse during the fight when we were taken." There was weight in her voice. Memory, regret. I should have seen the rope trap they set. Halvern set down the flour sack he'd been carrying. I ain't a doctor, he said, but I've set broken bones before. Ranch life teaches you field medicine whether you want it or not. We can tend to our own wounds, Nara replied, but there was hesitation in her tone. Halvern caught it. Out here, far from their people, even the strongest had limits. Maybe, he said calmly, but it don't hurt to have another pair of hands. My ma, Malis Crow, she was a midwife, taught me how to bind ribs proper. He didn't push, just offered. Among the Apache, healing was not a simple task. It was a craft carried by those trained for years, trusted with life itself. Being cut off from their people meant losing that care, that knowledge. I don't doubt that, Halvern said, but when someone's hurt, more hands never hurt. He glanced at Sirai's side. My mother, Milas Crow, she was a midwife before she married my father. She taught me how to bind ribs the right way. Over the next hour, as the canyon walls burned gold and amber beneath the setting sun, something rare began to take shape between them. An understanding. A quiet alliance. Halvern showed them everything. The well, the storage cellar, the grain bins. Nara and Sirai watched closely, their attention sharp, instinctive. They were used to reading land the way others read books. Survival had always depended on it. This creek, Sirai said, kneeling to test the water with careful fingers. It runs all year? Most of the time, Halvern answered. Fed by springs up in the rock. That's why my father chose this place. Nara looked at him, direct as ever. Your father is dead? No hesitation, no softening. Apache did not turn away from hard truths. Halvern nodded once. 5 years ago, I was in town selling cattle when it happened. The Caldera pack came through, killed my parents, my sister too, burned half the ranch down. His voice stayed even, but both women heard what lay beneath it. I rebuilt what I could, kept going. Nara studied him. Why? Halvern gave a faint shrug. What else was I supposed to do? The sisters exchanged a glance, one of those silent conversations that carried more weight than words. They understood loss, understood what it meant to be the last ones left standing, to choose between rebuilding or giving up. The men who attacked your family, Nara said carefully, were they Apache? She held his gaze, unflinching. Halvern met it just the same. Mexican bandits, but I know what you're asking. He leaned back slightly, eyes drifting toward the land. Yeah. I've lost cattle to Apache raids, fences torn down, sleepless nights chasing shadows across this valley. But I've also seen white men steal stock, Mexican fighters burn feed, and cavalry patrols take horses without paying a cent. His jaw tightened slightly. There are bad men in every color, same as there are good ones. It wasn't a speech, just the truth. The frontier was tangled with old grudges, shifting lines, and debts no one could settle. Halvern Crow had learned one thing out here. You judged a man by what he did, not where he came from. Night fell slow over the valley. Under the dim glow of lantern light, Nere worked beside Halvern as they bound Sirai's ribs. The younger woman clenched her jaw, enduring the pain without a sound. Halvern's hands were steady, careful, respectful. The hands of someone who understood that healing wasn't just skill, it was trust. You've done this before, Nara said, watching how precise his movements were. More times than I care to count, Halvern replied. Ranch life's rough. Nearest doctor's back in town. Out here you fix what you can, or you don't last long. When they finished, Sirai's breathing came easier, deeper. She gave a small nod, subtle, restrained, but it carried meaning. Gratitude, even if she wouldn't say it. There's salt, pork, and beans inside the cabin, Halvern said, pushing himself to his feet and brushing dust from his knees. "Help yourselves." He paused. "Come morning, I'll be checking the herd. You're welcome to see how things run." He turned to leave. "Halvern Crow." Nara's voice stopped him cold. He didn't turn right away. "Why did you really buy us today?" For a moment, he said nothing, measured the weight of the question and the truth behind it. Then he answered, "Because I know what it feels like to stand there and not be able to stop something terrible from happening to people you love." He glanced back at her, and sometimes, when you're given the chance to do what's right in a world full of wrong, you just take it. That night, Halvern lay on his narrow cot, staring up at the dark beams overhead. Above him, in the loft, he could hear the faint rustle of movement, the quiet presence of the two Apache sisters settling in for the night. For the first time since his family died, the ranch didn't feel empty. He didn't feel alone. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that 50 miles south, a patrol from the Iron Dominion had already found the burned remains of an Apache village, and their commanding officer was already planning a sweep, one that would put every native in the region, his new partners included, square in the path of something deadly. Dawn came early to the Morrison Ranch. Routine followed close behind. Halvern was already out feeding the horses when Nara stepped from the barn, silent despite her size. Her long black hair was braided with eagle feathers, and painted symbols marked her cheekbones. Traditional, deliberate. Not for war. Halvern understood that. It was something else. Identity. A quiet refusal to disappear in a world that tried to erase her. "Sirai still sleeps," she said. "The bandaging helped. She breathes easier now." "That's good," Halvern replied, nodding toward the corral where the cattle were beginning to stir. "You want to see how we run things out here?" "She's still sleeping," Nara said. "The binding helped. Her breathing's steadier now." Halvern nodded. "Good. Broken ribs aren't something you shrug off." He motioned toward the corral where the cattle were beginning to stir, restless in the early light. "You want to see how things run out here?" Over the next 2 hours, Nara proved something Halvern hadn't doubted, but hadn't fully witnessed either. Apache warriors adapted fast, real fast. She watched closely as Halvern moved through the herd, explaining how to spot injuries, how to read sickness in posture and movement, how to mend fences worn down by wind or pressure. He pointed out subtle signs most men missed: tracks, shifts in the dirt, broken brush that hinted at predators or nearby water. Nara didn't waste words. Her questions were sharp, practical, focused on balance, on how everything fit together. "You've lost cattle recently," she said at last, crouching near the watering trough, studying the ground. Halvern followed her gaze. "2, maybe 3, he admitted. Now that she pointed it out, he saw it clearly. Disturbed soil, scattered droppings, patterns he'd overlooked before. Nara's voice lowered. "Not random. This was taken." Halvern's jaw tightened. "Rustlers?" She shook her head slightly. "These tracks, unshod horses, riders who know how to move quiet." Her eyes darkened. "This wasn't clumsy theft. It was done clean." She straightened slowly. "Apache," she said. "But not ours. Different band. You can tell by the markings left behind." The realization hit Halvern hard. If Apache raiders were working the area, and the Iron Dominion was already suspicious of any native presence, then having Nara and Sirai on his land could put him square in the crosshairs from both sides. "You might want to rethink staying here," he said quietly. "This could bring trouble." "There is always trouble on the frontier," Nara cut in, calm but firm. She met his eyes. "The question is whether you face it alone, or with people who stand beside you." Before Halvern could answer, a distant sound cut through the air. Hoofbeats, fast, closing in. Both of them froze. Halvern grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the fence post. At the same time, Nera slipped into the shadows beside the barn, her movement fluid, silent, like a predator vanishing into brush. 6 riders crested the ridge. They came in hard, kicking up dust as they rode straight into the yard. Their horses were lathered, their uniforms unmistakable. Cavalry, Flintcrest riders. Their leader dismounted first, a man with cold blue eyes and a neatly trimmed mustache. Every movement he made carried the weight of discipline and authority. He stepped forward. "Halvern Crow," he said, voice sharp. "That's me." Halvern kept his tone even. "What can I do for you, Captain Rusk Halden?" "We're sweeping the territory," Halden replied, "tracking hostile Apache raiders. We've received reports you may be harboring fugitives." Halvern's mind moved fast, too fast. Someone in town had talked. Word about Nara and Sairai had spread. He'd known this moment would come. Just not this soon. "I'm not hiding anyone," Halvern said carefully. "This is a working ranch, nothing more." Halden's gaze drifted across the yard, taking in every detail with trained precision. The corral, the barn, the wagon. Nothing escaped him. "You mind if we take a look around?" he asked. His tone made it clear. It wasn't really a question. "Standard procedure," Halden added, "given reports of Indian activity." "Do I mind?" Halvern answered flatly. "Yeah, I do. But I figure you'll look anyway." Right then, Sarai stepped out of the barn as if she'd just woken up, slow and unhurried. Her long black hair fell loose over her shoulders, and her traditional Apache dress left no doubt about who she was. Standing near 7 feet tall, she carried a presence that made even mounted soldiers shift uneasily in their saddles. "Well now," Captain Rusk Halden said, a cold smile curling at the edge of his mouth. "Seems those reports were right after all." Sarai glanced at the soldiers, then at Halvern, reading the tension with the instincts of someone raised in war. Without hesitation, she moved to his side, not submissive, but protective. "She works here," Halvern said evenly. "Her and her sister. They work this ranch." Halden let out a harsh laugh. "Mr. Crow, I don't know what kind of lies these savages have fed you, but Apache don't work alongside white settlers. They raid, they kill, they burn. That's what they do." Halvern's voice dropped, low and dangerous. "That's funny, because from what I've seen, it's white men doing most of the lying, killing, and burning out here." The captain's expression hardened instantly. "Careful, Crow. Harboring enemy fighters is a serious charge. I could have all 3 of you in irons right now." Before the tension could snap, Nara stepped out from the shadows. She moved so silently it felt like she had formed out of the air itself. The horses reacted first, ears back, restless, sensing the still predatory calm in her stance. "And what would you arrest us for?" Nara asked, her Spanish clear, steady. "For working land honestly? For tending injured cattle? For fixing broken fences?" Halden looked up at the 2 towering Apache women, something flickering behind his eyes. Unease. Maybe even reluctant respect. This was a region where Apache raids had killed 17 settlers in just the past month. "Then arrest every white man in this territory for the crimes of white bandits," Sarai added coldly. "Your logic is the same." The air tightened. 6 armed cavalrymen, 3 unarmed civilians. The moment stretched like a drawn trigger. But Halvern saw it, the hesitation in Halden's eyes. These weren't frightened captives. They weren't hiding. They stood there, calm, unshaken, forcing him to confront something he didn't want to admit. "We'll be watching this ranch," Halden said at last, backing off without admitting it. "Any sign of trouble, missing cattle, damage in the area, and we'll be back." He swung into the saddle. "And next time, we might not be so understanding about your arrangement." The Flintcrest riders turned and rode out, dust trailing behind them as they disappeared over the ridge. Only then did Halvern feel it. The weight. They were marked now. No more standing in the middle. No more pretending neutrality. They had chosen a side, whether they meant to or not. And whatever came next, it wouldn't stay contained within the fences of his small ranch. The next 3 weeks settled into a rhythm none of them had expected. Nara proved to have a natural gift with cattle. She could spot a sick animal from 50 yards out, read grazing patterns like a map, and help Halvern stretch every inch of land further than he thought possible. Sirai, still healing from her ribs, took on the finer work, repairing saddles, preserving meat, maintaining the weapons that life on the frontier demanded. But it was in the evenings, when the sun dipped low and the work slowed, that their partnership truly took shape. Halvern taught them the business side of ranching, how to calculate feed costs, plan for seasonal changes, deal with buyers who saw a lone rancher as easy prey, and in return, the sisters gave him knowledge no book ever could: how to read weather in the shape of clouds, which plants could save a life in an emergency, how to move across open land without leaving a trace. One night, as they watched the herd settle under the fading light, Nara spoke quietly. "Your cattle stay too close together." They stood watching the herd settle into the fading light. "That makes them easy targets," Nara said quietly. "For predators, and for Apache raiders." Halvern studied the cattle again, this time through her eyes, through strategy, not routine. "I always kept them close so they'd be easier to manage," he admitted. "Never thought about the risk. Everything is strategy," Sirai said softly. "When you live on contested ground." Her gaze swept the valley. "Your ranch sits where 3 paths cross: Apache territory, trader routes, and cavalry patrol lines. Whether you want it or not, you're standing in the middle of a storm." She was right. They all knew it. The land was valuable, but that same value made it dangerous, a crossing point where different worlds collided more often with each passing season. Halvern had inherited this place from his father, but now he was beginning to understand. Owning land and holding on to it were 2 very different fights. The test came early one Tuesday morning. Halvern spotted dust rising on the southern horizon. 3 riders. Fast. But not cavalry. Their riding was different. Fluid, efficient, built for distance, not formation. "Apache," Nara said, her voice tightening. "Mescalero band if I read the horse marks, right?" She narrowed her eyes. "They're not with us." Halvern checked his rifle. At the same time, both sisters moved without hesitation, retrieving the weapons they had kept hidden since arriving. Nara gripped a traditional war club in one hand and a Winchester in the other. Sirai chose her bow. 6 arrows loosed before most men could reload once. Deadly. Silent. But as the riders drew closer, Nara's expression shifted. From alert to confusion. Then something else. Hope. "Nietzsche," she murmured. "My cousin." The lead rider was a young Apache warrior, close to her age. Ritual scars marked his face, signs of battles survived, not just fought. He rode straight toward them, then dismounted with the ease of someone born in the saddle. Words flew between them. Fast, sharp Apache. Too quick for Halvern to follow. But he didn't need to understand the language. Their bodies told him everything. This wasn't a raid. This was family. At last, Nara turned back to him, her eyes bright. Holding back tears she refused to let fall. "My cousin brings news," she said. Tovek stepped forward, his Spanish measured but clear. "Some of our people survived the cavalry attack on our village. They have been searching for us for months." He paused. "There is a gathering. Survivors from many bands are joining together in a hidden canyon beyond the Blue Mountains." His eyes shifted to the sisters. "We can take you there. You will be safe among your own again." This was the moment Halvern had expected. And feared. At the same time, they had found their way back, their people, their home. They didn't need him anymore, didn't need his land, his protection. They could leave. Sarai looked at him, her expression unreadable. "This is what we have prayed for," she said slowly. "To be with our people again. To live among those who understand us." Halvern forced his voice steady. "Then you should go." He swallowed whatever else he might have said. This was always meant to be temporary, until you found something better. But Nara was watching him closely. Too closely. "And what about you, Halvern Crow?" she asked. "What happens to the white rancher who sheltered Apache fugitives when the cavalry returns and finds us gone?" Halvern shrugged, forcing a lightness he didn't feel. "I'll manage, always have." "No," Sarai said, firm. "You won't." Her voice cut through the air. "Captain Rusk Halden already suspects you. When we disappear, he'll assume you helped us escape. He will look for reasons to pressure you, to take your cattle, to drive you off land your family has held for generations." Tovek listened now with growing interest. "This white man helped you?" he asked. "Fed you? Gave you shelter without asking anything in return?" "More than that," Nara said. "He risked his life, his land, to free us from slavery. He treated us as equals." She hesitated, searching for the right word, then found it. "He is a friend." Tovek studied Halvern again, this time with something new in his eyes. Respect. Men like that were rare, in any world. "Men like that are rare, in any people," Tovek said, studying Halvern. "So what happens if my cousins choose to come with me to the canyon?" Halvern didn't look away. "I hope they find the peace and safety they deserve," he said, "and I'll probably die trying to hold this place together on my own." Silence followed. Heavy. Honest. Sarai broke it. "Tell me about this sanctuary," she said. "Is it safe? Is there food? Shelter? Protection from the Iron Dominion?" Tovek hesitated. "For now," he admitted. "But winter is coming, and there are many mouths to feed. The canyon offers cover, but little else. We survive by hunting, trading, and taking what we can from travelers." Halvern understood what that meant. Raids. The Stonewind kin were being pushed into it just to survive, drawing more and more attention from the Iron Dominion toward that hidden canyon. It wasn't a sanctuary. It was a trap waiting to close. "There's another way," Nara said slowly. Something had shifted in her eyes, an idea taking shape. "What if the sanctuary came here?" All three men stared at her. "Here?" Halvern echoed. "Think about it," she continued. "This land has water, shelter, defensible ground. It sits on recognized territory, with legal protection. And it has something the canyon never will." She glanced at Halvern. "A white partner who can deal with authorities, buy supplies, and shield our people." Tovek frowned. "You would trust this man with the lives of Apache families? Children? Elders who have nowhere else to go?" Sarai answered without hesitation. "I would trust Halvern Crow with my life." She held his gaze. "I already have." The weight of it hit him all at once. This wasn't about two people anymore. This was something far bigger. They were talking about turning his ranch into a hidden refuge for displaced Apache, right under the nose of a cavalry that already suspected him. It was dangerous. Maybe impossible. Definitely madness. But it was also right. "How many are we talking about?" Halvern asked. 3 days later, Halvern Crow stood on his porch, staring out across the valley at the most extraordinary sight he had ever witnessed. 23 Apache survivors. The Stonewind kin moved through his land like ghosts, organized, efficient, purposeful. They worked with the quiet precision of people who had spent too long surviving on the edge of extinction. There were warriors like Tovek, but also elders, their faces carved with years and memory. Women carrying infants across their backs while handling horses with practiced ease. Children whose eyes had seen far too much loss, far too early. Nara took control of it all with near military precision. The ridge blades secured the perimeter, setting hidden lookout posts among the surrounding rock formations. The Hearth Mothers established communal cooking areas, designed to vanish in minutes if patrols approached. The Ember Young were given tasks, small but meaningful, keeping them busy, teaching them how to endure. "It's working better than I expected," Halvern admitted to Sirai as they watched an elder woman kneeling in the dirt, teaching 3 children how to read cattle tracks. "I was worried about, well, the differences." Sirai smiled faintly. It was the first time Halvern had seen real peace on her face since the day he bought her freedom. "We are practical people," she said. "We adapt to survive." She gestured towards the land. "Your ranch gives us what we need: safety, resources, legitimacy." Then she met his eyes. "And we give you what you need: knowledge, protection, and labor. A fair trade." But both of them knew it wouldn't stay simple. The arrangement was fragile. Captain Rusk Halden had already made 2 more courtesy visits that week. Each time the ranch appeared empty, just Halvern and the 2 sisters in plain sight. The Stonewind kin had learned quickly how to disappear. But Halden's suspicion was growing. And sooner or later, that suspicion would come back heavier. The Apache had become masters at vanishing into the land the moment hoofbeats echoed across the valley. But Captain Rusk Halden's suspicion was growing sharper by the day. The storm Halvern had been expecting finally broke on a Thursday afternoon. One of the outer scouts came riding in hard, his horse lathered, his breath ragged. "A large cavalry unit is coming in from the east," he said, barely able to get the words out. 40 men, maybe 50. They're searching everything: buildings, caves, hiding places. This wasn't a routine visit. This was a sweep. Nara moved instantly. Her voice, calm, steady, cut through the rising tension like a blade. "Standard dispersal. Families to the northern cave system. Warriors to the southern ridges. Move. Now." There was no panic. Only motion. The Stonewind kin dissolved into action, executing the routine they had practiced again and again, gone within minutes, like they had never been there at all. Tovek stepped up beside Halvern, his expression dark. "This patrol is too large, too thorough. They will find signs of us, no matter how careful we've been." He didn't need to finish. Halvern already understood. If the Iron Dominion found proof he had been sheltering Apache refugees, they wouldn't just arrest him, they would take everything. His land, his cattle, his livelihood. They would make an example out of him. And worse, they would track the Stonewind kin and wipe them out, the families who had just begun to breathe again. "There might be another way," Halvern said slowly. The idea forming in his mind was either brilliant or suicidal. "What if we don't hide?" he continued. "What if we meet them head on?" Sirai stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Halvern, 50 armed soldiers are riding here to arrest us for crimes we didn't commit. And you think confronting them is the answer?" "Sometimes," Halvern said, thinking fast, "the best place to hide is in plain sight." He turned to Nara. "How many of our people speak decent Spanish?" 8, maybe 10, she answered. "Why?" "And how many could pass for Mexican ranch hands if they dressed right and kept their mouths shut?" Understanding sparked in her eyes. "You want us to pretend to be hired workers?" "Not pretend," Halvern corrected. "Make it real." He pointed toward the house. "I've got papers, contracts, payment records. We backdate them. Build a trail that shows I've been employing Mexican laborers for months." He took a breath. "When the cavalry shows up, they won't see refugees. They'll see a rancher running a legitimate operation with hired hands." Tovek frowned. "And the ones who don't speak Spanish? The elders? The children, entire families. Halvern didn't hesitate. It's common for vaqueros to travel with family, especially during work seasons. We group them together, cover everyone. It was a desperate plan, fragile, full of holes, 100 ways it could fail. But as the dust cloud of the approaching cavalry rose higher on the horizon, desperation was all they had left. The next hour became controlled chaos. Apache men stripped off their traditional clothing, replacing it with wide-brimmed hats, worn leather chaps, and the rough look of Mexican cowhands. The hearth mothers covered their hair with shawls, practicing the subtle differences in how Mexican women carried their children. The ember young were taught simple Spanish phrases, and warned to stay close to their assigned families, no matter what happened. Halvern burned anything that couldn't be explained. Apache tools, clothing, symbols, gone. He scattered Mexican coins around the bunkhouse, building the illusion piece by piece. Everything had to hold. Everything had to feel real. Nara and Sarai were the hardest part. Their height alone made them impossible to hide. No disguise would change that. So instead, they would rely on something else. Their flawless Spanish, and Halvern's story. That they were mixed blood interpreters, hired to manage communication with the Mexican crew. It was a gamble, a dangerous one, but it was the only card left to play. When Captain Rusk Halden finally rode in with his expanded patrol, he found exactly what he had come looking for. A ranch alive with work. Men moving cattle, women tending fires, children playing in the dirt. A crew of what appeared to be Mexican laborers going about their business. What he hadn't expected was how real it all felt. "Well now," Halden said, scanning the scene as a group of children played with carved wooden horses, laughing in quick musical Spanish. "Quite an operation you've got here, Crow." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Looks like the place has grown since my last visit." Halvern didn't miss a beat. "Cattle's been doing well this season," he said casually. "Had to bring in extra hands to keep up. Truth is, these folks handle livestock better than I do." Halden dismounted slowly, then began to search. Not rushed, not careless, methodical. He moved through the ranch like a man who expected to find something, and intended to prove it. He questioned workers one by one. His words filtered through Nara, who translated with calm precision. He inspected the bunkhouse where families had arranged their belongings just right. Worn blankets, scattered tools, the lived-in look of traveling laborers. And the Stonewind kin. They didn't falter. Not once. They answered with quiet patience, the kind worn by people used to suspicion, used to being watched, judged. Every word, every movement. Perfect. Then came the moment everything could have fallen apart. Halden stopped in front of an old man. The elder stood still, weathered and dignified, while a small child clung tightly to his leg. Maheo, respected among his people. A man whose presence alone carried weight. If anyone was going to be recognized, it would be him. "Ask him how long he's worked here," Halden ordered. Nara translated. The old man listened, then answered. In flawless Spanish. Smooth, natural, unshaken. Even his own people seemed caught off guard. Later, Halvern would learn the truth. Maheo had fought in Mexico in his youth. He spoke the language as easily as his own. But in that moment, as Halden gave a dismissive nod and moved on, Halvern understood something important. Sometimes survival came from the places you least expected. 2 hours. That's how long the search lasted. 2 long, grinding hours. When it was over, Halden had nothing. No evidence, no proof, no reason to act. The patrol mounted up again, frustration written plainly across their faces. "We'll be back, Crow," Halden said, his voice edged with warning. Sooner or later, your luck runs out. Then they rode off, disappearing beyond the eastern ridge. Only when the dust settled did Halvern feel it. His legs nearly gave out beneath him. They had done it, pulled off something that shouldn't have worked, something that saved not just his ranch, but 23 lives. The Stonewind kin now had something they hadn't known in a long time, a chance, a real one, to live. As the tension broke, Nera and Sirai removed their shawls. Around them, the Ember Young burst into excited chatter, slipping back into Apache as they relived what had just happened. But Halvern stood still, quiet, because he understood what this meant. This wasn't temporary anymore. They weren't guests, not workers, not even partners. They were family now, and like any family on the frontier, they would face whatever came next. Together. What had once been a struggling ranch was changing into something else entirely. Something bigger. A place where different worlds didn't just collide. They learned to stand side by side. But that was a story for another time. For now, it was enough that they had survived, that they had found one another, that they had proven something simple but powerful. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is choose dignity and stand together, no matter what tries to tear them apart.